Hi, BookTube world. I am Kendra, and this is Readworthy. And me and my husband Terry, have been gone for a very long time. And life got away from us, and things happened, job changes happened. If you're new to us, or if you're someone who's been watching our videos and was like, oh, I guess they stopped making videos. We were doing it where it's just me and him together, and we would talk about the books that we were both reading, and then he would do all the editing. Now that our life has changed quite a bit, we don't have the time to both of us doing videos and then him edit. So we are trying something new. If it doesn't work, then we'll try something else. But for now, it's me doing the videos, you know, what my reading journey is like, and then he's doing all the editing. So we'll see how this goes. And hopefully you guys are just fine with it being me and talking about the books that, you know, I've read and what I'm reading and what's forth. And maybe down the road, if life allows us to, he'll be doing his own videos as well, doing his books. I just read a lot more. He takes his time. He physically reads a book at a time, and I'm going through 3 or 4 of them in different medias. And so it's just more content is more available coming from me. For the first video, coming back from, I don't know how long it was, like 5 months break, I figured I would talk about all the good books thus far that I've read this year. Last we left you, we had just started out the year of 2022, and we didn't talk about any books. We just talked about a haul, and we talked about our goals, but there was no books spoken about in those videos. And I figured I would tell you about the really, really good books that I really enjoyed reading thus far this year. And then I'll probably do another video about the books that were like disappointments, or books that I wasn't, you know, too pleased with reading this year. But this time it's a 4 and a 5-star rating kind of book video. So there's quite a bit, so let's go ahead and get into it, okay? So the first couple of books that I want to talk about, it's more of a series, and I started reading manga. And this is the very first time. I've never even picked it up. I've never even glanced at them. I found one of my favorite booktubers that I watch. They loved it and their experience. And so I figured I would give it a shot and see how it goes. I picked up the same series that they started out with. So that would be One Piece. And One Piece, again, is a manga series that is very, very, very big series. I've gotten all the way up through volume 15, which, if you don't know anything about One Piece, that I'm telling you, that is like the very edge of a very large iceberg. So I'm just now kind of dipping my toes into this series. But every single volume has been either 4 or 5 stars. I've not been disappointed by any one of these volumes. This is the first one. Like I said, I just finished 15 just a couple of days ago. This is about a found family, pretty much, kind of like a way. It's about all these friends that are together, and they are truly there for each other, like a family would be. But they're all a little bit different in their own little quirky ways. They're pirates. And Luffy is the main character, and he wants to be king of the pirates. And so to become king of the pirates, he wants to get this treasure that no one can seem to get a hold of. It's called the One Piece. And that's his journey, trying to get the One Piece and collecting a crew as he goes. It's so heartwarming and exciting and funny. It's great. So because of this, I decided to dip my toe a little bit deeper in the manga pool and try another volume called Spy X Family. So I don't actually have physical copies of this. There is a app that I use that you can read any manga that you want. And so I found it that way. It's about a guy. He is a spy. He's very, very, very good. He has a mission and the mission requires for him to have a child and a wife, and he has neither. So he has to go find those 2 things. He goes to an orphanage and he finds a little girl who just happens to read minds. She does not allow anyone to know that she can read minds. He does not tell her that he's a spy. He just adopts her. And then, but she knows that he's a spy, which excites her, which is so cute. And then there is he finds a woman to be his wife. It's very weird, but it's great. And she is an assassin and also needs coverage to like make it where it's like, I'm normal. See, I have a husband, so everything's fine. And so she doesn't tell him that she's an assassin. He doesn't tell her that he's a spy. And the little girl knows everything because she can read minds, but she doesn't let anyone know that. It's great. I'm caught up so far in that series. It's wonderful, and I love it so much. The little girl, she is the best thing to read from point of view. It's great. So after that, this month was a book club pick from a different booktuber, and it was called The Haunting of Ashburn House by Darcy Coates. And I like this so much that I let someone else borrow it already, so I don't have it with me at this moment. But I enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. It's about a haunting, obviously. It's a horror book. It is about a woman who gets a house wheeled to her and from a relative that she had no idea that she had. And so she goes to this house to see what it's all about. She's pretty much really down on her luck. Like, this is her only place that she can go to. She has no money. And so her and her cat go to this house in hopes to find a new home. Things obviously go very, very wrong very, very quickly. I really enjoyed this. A lot of people say it's a cozy horror, which I don't know what that means. I don't know how you can be cozy and be a horror, but whatever. I wouldn't say like it was like horror, like it wasn't like the worst thing I've ever read in the aspect of scariness, but I found it very, very creepy. The descriptions and everything that the author goes through, I thought was fantastic. I gave it 4 stars because there are plot holes or conveniences in the story, but I enjoyed the story so much that I'm willing to overlook it. And like I said, it did creep me out. There was a time that I was reading it and it was about midnight, everyone's asleep, and I'm still sitting in the dark reading this book, and I was like, oh, okay, I gotta put this down because I'm not gonna move to sleep because this stuff is starting to creep me out a little bit too much, and like noises were like creeping me out in my own home. I totally recommend it. I do agree with the whole cozy horror and the aspect of that. You do get like a day-in-day life with this woman. And so if that's something that you're like, I really don't care about stuff like that, then this might not be a horror book for you. But I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. So the next book that I read was Daisy Jones and the Six. So this is my copy of it. I was able to get a Audible book of this from my library because it was available through my library right away. I found that as a sign to read it, so I did, and I'm glad I went through Audible. This would have gotten probably a 4-star from me regardless, but the Audible book, the experience that you get for that with this is totally bumps it up a star. It's a full cast, so if you do Audible, I definitely suggest that you read this book through Audible. The book itself is written like someone is interviewing this band. It is about Daisy Jones, and the Six is a band, and they get together and they kind of make almost like the Beatles kind of a situation in the 1970s, and so it's great. It's fantastic. I've read her Evelyn Hugo book already, so I knew that I was going to like I liked what the author already brought to the table once. Like I said, the audio book just made it even that much better, and it really is good, so I gave it a 5-star read. Okay, so the next book that I read was actually another audio book. I have a subscription through Scribd, and so I found this book through Scribd, The School for Good and Evil. This is the second of that series. It is a middle grade book. This one's called A World Without Princes, and it is, like I said, it's middle grade, and it is about a school. And one side of this, it's almost like a boarding school almost, and one side of it is for the good and the other side is for the bad. And so what that means is like fairy tales wise, like the princes and the princesses and all the good creatures and all that stuff go to the good, and then like the witches and the villains and, you know, all those go to the bad. And so it's actually got like daughters and grandkids from like the actual fairy tales that you know and love, if you are into fairy tales at all, or Disney fairy tales or what have you. And so it's their kids going to these schools. There are two main girls. Agatha is one and Sophie is the other. So this is Sophie and this is Agatha. And I won't tell you exactly what happens in the second one because obviously that will spoil the first one in the series. But in the first book, Sophie really, really wants to go to this school. They were chosen to go. Her and Agatha were chosen to go. But Agatha was dropped off at the good school, and Sophie was dropped off at the bad school. And they think that there was a huge mess-up, and so they want to like fix that problem. And it is very good. The first book, I gave it 4 stars, and it took I read that last year. And like I said, I was just kind of scrolling through Scribd and I was like, oh, I didn't know this was available. So I went ahead and started listening to the second one. The second one was so much better. It was so good, which I never can find a second book in a series that is better than the first. Like usually the second one is like, okay, let's move on. But this one, it was so good. It makes me want to go into the third one right away. Like the stakes are higher. Things happen that are like, whew. This is a middle grade? Really? That dark? It's middle? Whew. If you do middle grade at all, I suggest you get into the series because it's good stuff so far. So the next book we're going to talk about is a book that I have on my Kindle. So its name is Layla, and it is by Colleen Hoover. And this is actually kind of like a big surprise for me. When I went into, I've read a lot of Colleen Hoover, thanks to my husband finding this author. I've never even heard of Colleen Hoover until he got me my first book to read on this. So I was enjoying everything that I was reading, so I was like, I'm just going to go ahead and read Layla, even though when I look it up, the reviews aren't so hot. They're not the greatest. And so I wasn't expecting too much, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to read it anyway because it's Colleen Hoover and I really want to read as much from her as I can. So I went ahead and got it on e-file because I really did think I was just going to be like, this book's okay. I'm glad I don't actually have a physical copy, but I'm going to have to buy a copy because I gave this book 4 stars. I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was great. The things that people were complaining about was things that I felt like once you got to the end of the book, it was all explained and told you why things happened the way they did and why the characters felt the way they felt. It is about a man and a woman. They fall in love. Something horrific happens. She recovers, and when she recovers, she's apparently not the same in his viewpoint as she was before. Spooky things do happen. Almost sci-fi-ish sort of things happen. It was told very well. And even though there were times that the characters kind of pissed me off for certain statements, I guess you could say, that they say in the book, it was all explained at the end. So it made all perfect sense to me. So I liked it. I enjoyed it. I really liked the ending. So I gave it 4 stars. I thought it was good stuff. So the next book that I'm going to talk about is called The Love
Hypothesis
by Ali Hazelwood. And it is a Book of the Month book choice. This is actually a borrowed book. I don't actually own this book, but I'm probably going to need to go ahead and do that because I really liked this story. I'm really starting to get into romance. For the longest time, I wasn't a romance reader. I'm not really sure what's flipped the switch on that, but I am starting to really enjoy it, especially when there's a little spice in the book as well. Just saying. So this is about a teacher and a student, but she's like a grad student. They kind of do a fake dating trope. They do a fake dating trope. She has her reasons, but she's pretty much like pulled him into being, pretending to be her boyfriend, and things happen from there. Their relationship is so, so adorable. And I really enjoyed them actually, going through all the situations that they'll put into. and they're both scientists, but she's a female scientist in a male world, and so just watching her like get through all that and all that, that was fun to read about. The characters were very likable. I enjoyed them immensely. All the side characters were good stuff, and so I gave this book a 5-star read. Okay, so the next book I'm going to talk about was also a borrowed book, which I've already given back. It's called The Good Marriage by Kimberly McCreet. I think that's how you say it. In case you didn't know, in case you haven't watched other videos of mine, I am a really bad pronouncer of words, like just any words. So usually my husband's here to like help me through that, but he's not here anymore, so this is all on me. And so hopefully I'm saying this word right, because otherwise that's going to suck. The Good Marriage is about sort of like a little mix-up. Like it's a little bit of it's a thriller. It's also a legal, almost like a legal thriller kind of thing. There's 2 timelines. So one is from the wife's point of view before stuff goes down, and her life and how she's living through it, and things are happening to her that are not good, and so it's just her trying to deal with all that. And then it's from the point of view of the lawyer who is taking care of the husband. You find out from the very beginning, I think it's even on the book cover, so there's no spoils, but the wife is been killed, and so they're trying to figure things out, and obviously the husband, being the husband, is automatically a suspect, and so it's from his lawyer's point of view. And she knew him from law school, and so she's helping him out. And it's her trying to prove that he is innocent, because that's truly what she believes that he is. Those 2 point of views, and like I said, it's a thriller, and it was very, very good. I enjoyed it, obviously, because I gave the book 4 stars. The ending, the little twists at the end, there's more than one, and it was, it wasn't like something that was like, holy crap, like that wasn't, oh man, that's going to make me think about it for a while. Nothing like that. But it still was I enjoyed it immensely. I enjoyed my little ride of it. So I recommend 100%. If you're a thriller writer or thriller reader, especially if you like legal things happening in your thrillers, legal thrillers, this is definitely the book for you, let me tell you. Okay, so the next book that I read was for another book club that I was a part of a couple months ago, and it was The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. And this is a 5 novels in one book. Okay, so this is not the whole book. They're very, very, very small, short little novellas. Okay, so the very first book is the only one that I've read so far, but I will be reading all of 5 because the first one was fantastic. And I auto-booked this, and the reason I auto-booked it was because Stephen Fry is the reader, and if you know anything about Stephen Fry, he is wonderful to listen from, the point of view of. The rest of them I'll probably read instead of listen to, because Stephen Fry only did the first book out of the 5 in the series, and so I'll probably read the rest. So it is about a guy who is on Earth. It doesn't know it yet, but Earth is meant to be like explode. It's supposed to go away. Earth is supposed to go away for an intergalactic highway, which is funny because in the very, very beginning of the book, his house is being torn down for a highway. And so it's kind of goofy. And his friend is actually an alien. He doesn't know that yet, obviously. And his friend saves him from being part of the demolition of Earth. And so he saves him and hitchhikes onto a ship, and it goes from there. It's kind of like almost like a slice of life adventure, and there's multiple characters, and everyone's extremely goofy. It's very English humor. I enjoyed it so much. There was so many conversations that happen in this book that is just like so off the wall, and it's so hilarious. There's so many things that I'm sure I don't annotate any of my books. I feel like that's spoiler for yourself when you go back to reread books. But my husband does. I'm sure that if he were to get a hold of this copy, he would be highlighting the crap out of it, because there was so many things that made me giggle, like truly laugh out loud as I was listening to it. There was one time I was in the grocery store and I was listening to it, and I was laughing loudly, and people were like, and I just couldn't help myself. It was great, and people think I'm weird. That's totally fine, because the book is kooky and weird, so it just fits in right along with that. Highly recommend. It is sci-fi, because obviously they're in outer space, but it's goofy sci-fi. So it's not something that, like, I'm not a sci-fi reader. I've read very, very little sci-fi, and so nothing went over my head. Nothing made me go, wait, what? Hold on, what? And if you enjoy humor in your books, you gotta read this, because there's a cult following on this series, and I know exactly why, because I am part of that cult. I will be continuing with the rest of the novels in this book, because great stuff, 5 stars. Okay, so another book that I read this year so far, which is another 5-star read for me, is Verity by Colleen Hoover. This is a thriller take of her books. If you don't know, Colleen Hoover is more of a romance writer. There's still romance in this book. I don't know if I would call it like fantastic. Like I wouldn't be going to this book for the romance. Let me just say it that way. I would be going into this book for the thrills, and being it's a thriller, it's more of a thriller than a romance in my viewpoint. It is about a woman who is an author, and Verity is another author who has gotten in a horrific car accident, and she has a very, very popular series, and it's not finished yet, and she can't finish it. Apparently Verity is a fan of the girl's writing, and so the husband of Verity wants her to finish the series, so that way it's done. And so they ask her to do so, and she says yes. And it is so unsettling. It's very unsettling. It's not horror, it's not scary, it's just extremely creepy and unsettling. Those parts of this that you're just like, if you put yourself in that woman's shoes, you're gonna be like, oh my god, oh, it's just ugh. I read this book in one day. I loved it so much. And I loved it so much, I had to talk to people about it. And since it's like not a brand new, just came out book, not too many people are talking about it anymore. So I made people who, at my job, read this book who don't even read books, okay? I was just like, no, you're going to read this because this is fantastic, and I need to talk to someone about it, and I want to see what your viewpoint is of it. So I made 2 people at work read this book, and they both read it in a day, and these are people who don't read books every single day, or every single month, or even every single year. So the fact that they were able to get through it through a day should tell you that it is a fantastic book, and you should totally read it, because it is very, very good. So another book club pick that I was a part of, that I read this book, was called Kings of the Wild by Nicholas Eames. And this book is a fantasy book, even though it doesn't look it, but it is a humor fantasy book. It kind of reminds me of like a very good written Dungeons and Dragons. So if you know anything about Dungeons and Dragons playthrough, it kind of reminds me of that, like an epic Dungeons and Dragons playthrough kind of thing. I gave this 5 stars. It is about a band of guys, and they, back in their heyday, they were like the warriors to watch out for. They were, they were great fighters, and they were unbeatable almost. And so now they've retired, and they're old men, and they're living their lives separately. And one of the men in the band, daughter is in trouble, and so he asks to bring the band back together, and so he brings them all back together so that they can go save, so they can go save his daughter. There was a couple, a little like parts. I'm just like, really, like a lot of safe stuff happens, but the humor in this book was so good and so delightful that there was nothing else, but I had to give it 5 stars. There's another one out now. I think it's about the daughter, but it was very good, and I really enjoyed it. And if you are a big fan of humor in your fantasies, then I suggest you pick this up. And if you know anything about like game through of Dungeons and Dragons and you're a fan of that, there's a book version of it, and here it is. So go ahead and get it because you're going to like it, I promise. So another book that I read, thanks to my husband's recommendation, is The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas. I think it's Dumas. He's French. He was French. I mean, he's dead now. It's a classic, and it's a chunker, as you can see. There's over 1,000 pages in this book. I auto-booked this book, which I feel like even if I hadn't, it probably would have taken me a lot longer if I'm honest. The beginning of this book is fantastic. It hooks you right away. A lot happens in the very beginning. It's very, very addicting to read. And then in the middle, there is a little bit of I would count it as a slope, like it goes down pretty quickly in my opinion, but then once the action hits again and picks up, you won't be able to put it down. It's very good, and the ending is very good as well. And it is what a lot of people would say is the ultimate revenge story. So it has a little bit of everything in this book that you could possibly want. There is an abridged version if the page count kind of intimidates you. Either way, if you do it auto, if you do it abridged, if you read the whole thing, I truly highly recommend it. I'm not the biggest classic reader. I have set myself to read 5 classic books for the entire year, if that tells you anything, because I dabble in classics. And the fact that I got through the entire thing because it is that good, it speaks volumes, I promise. If you want to at all read a wonderful, well-rounded, well-written classic book, this is one of your go-tos, trust me. It's good stuff. And like I said, in the very beginning, it's like, why didn't I get to this book sooner? Because it catches on very, very fast, and it will catch you very, very quickly, I promise. Okay, so one of the very first books that I got to this year was something that I was extremely highly anticipating. It came out this year, and that would be In Every Generation by Kendra Blake. So she is the author of the selection, which I was not a fan of at all. I read the first book, and I enjoyed that. In case you don't know, the selection is a YA book. It's kind of like a little spin of The Bachelor. I'm not a big fan of The Bachelor, so it's not surprising. I enjoyed the first book, but going into the second one, it was getting dull for me, so I let it go. She also wrote the Three Crowns series, Three Dark Crowns series, which I did enjoy a great deal. I was excited to hear that she really is in case you don't know, this is almost like a sequel to Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which is a TV series by Joss Whedon. I am one of the biggest Buffy fans you will ever meet. And I know there's some people out there that will argue with me that they're better than I am, but that's not the case. I love Buffy. Buffy was my go-to TV show, and it still is. I still have it, and anytime I bring it out to start watching the series again, my husband just rolls his eyes. He's like, "Oh God, Buffy again," because he knows I watch it from the very first season all the way to the very end, and I'm not going to stop until I watch the whole thing. So this is almost like, obviously the creator of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Joss Whedon. He didn't write this book, so it's kind of like it's kind of a sequel. And so it is, if you know anything about Buffy, there is a character named Willow, and she's a witch, and she has a daughter, not in the series, and her daughter is in this book. It's about her daughter. She finds out that she is a potential slayer, and she also has witchy abilities, so this daughter of hers can do both. So this is all new. And it's almost like bringing up a whole new Scooby Gang. And apparently this is going to be a series, which I am delighted because this was fantastic. The author really did her due diligence in giving a sequel the attention it deserved, because this was a great take. And any Buffy fan will love to continue because there are characters from the series that are in this book. And so let me tell you, it is great, and you will enjoy it immensely. If you like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and you enjoyed it all the way to the end, and you're like, I want more, here you go, pick this up because, mwah, great, 5 stars easily. And of course, that might be a little bit because I mean, I'm a big, huge fan, so it was going to get a high rating regardless, as long as she did her due diligence. The author did her, research, and she did. And it's obvious that she's a big fan herself, and it shows through the writing. So you should pick it up. So another book that I read early in the year was a book called Before We Were Yours. It's a historical fiction book. I lent it to someone, so I don't actually have it. It's by Lisa Wingate. It was very, very heartbreaking. Like I said, it's a historical fiction. There are 2 timelines, the present and the past. I believe the past was like in the 1940s. Like I said, I read this in the very beginning of this year. And so it is about 5 kids, all different kinds of ages, from a 2-year-old to like I think a 12-year-old or a 10-year-old. They in certain situations happen, and they end up in a orphanage that is not on the up and up at all. Very, very fishy, and they treat their kids very, very awful because they're awful people. And it's from that point of one of the kids' point of views. Just if you are a trigger warning, so kid abuse happens in this book. A lot of things happen in this book, and it will break your heart, just so you know. Just know that going in. It is very good. The story that's being told is very, very good. I don't know if you've ever heard of Butter Babies, but this is an actual historical thing that happened. It's kind of like a take on that. It's not the same story, but the story kind of is a lot like that. The present day is a girl who is related to her grandmother. Has some kind of connection to all this orphanage and these kids. And so you don't know going in what kind of connection. You just know that there is a connection. It's from her point of view, and she's just trying to figure out the history of her family and what happened and what was going on and what kind of connection her grandmother has with all of this. And so I did enjoy the kids' timeline a lot more than the her trying to figure out the past, the present timeline. She's doing a lot of research, so there's a lot of like driving here and looking at this, and there's not. It's not as intriguing until you get into the very end of the book, and then her timeline makes perfect sense of why it's a part of the book, because it does play a great deal in the role of telling the story. It's very, very good though, and I gave it 4 stars. And the last book that I'm going to talk about was also in the beginning of the year book, and it was a book club pick, and it's called A History of Wild Places. This is a book that I lent out. I lend out my books all the time. I really need to like get like a little library stamp or something to make sure that I keep track of how many books and who I lent them out to, because I lend out books all the time. And anyway, it's called A History of Wild Places. It's by Shay Earnshaw. It is a little bit of a magic realism kind of a book. The very beginning of the book is about a guy who is very good at finding people. He has the ability to touch objects and things and people and be able to like see what happened at that time period. He uses this ability to be able to find people, and he does a very good job at it. And so he's been hired by a couple of parents to find their daughter, who is a grown daughter. It's not like she's like 10 or anything. She's a grown up. And to find her and obviously bring her home. She's a really well-known, loved children's author. And so her last book apparently got a lot of bad press. And so they're afraid that she ran off, not being able to handle it. And so they want her to be found. And so they hire this guy to go do so. And then it jumps into this town. It goes away from that completely, and it jumps into this town about a woman and her husband and her sister and them living in this town. And there is some fishy, weird stuff happening in this town. And it's about them trying to figure stuff out and try to figure out what's going on. And a lot of, if you've ever watched the movie The Village, it's got a lot of those vibes in it. The very beginning of this book hooks you very quickly. And the ending of this book, I gave this book 4 stars, and the reason I gave it 4 stars is because the ending of this book, even though I liked most of the ending, there were little bits and pieces of it that kind of annoyed me. It almost pissed me off. There were parts of this book at the end that I was just like annoyed with completely. But it's still very good. And if you kind of like mysteries in your book, and and if you've ever watched the movie called The Village and you liked The Village even a little bit, definitely pick this book up because it has those vibes. It's a good book. You should definitely read it. 4 stars. And so those are all the books that I've read so far that I really, really, really enjoyed and really wanted to tell you all about so far in the year. And I'll probably be coming back and telling you about the books that have disappointed me or annoyed the crap out of me or pissed me off, and we'll have a little rant rave about those. And so if you liked this video, if you enjoyed listening to me talk about books that I love, please give me a like. If you want to, hear more from me, subscribe, and we'll continue talking about books till, the dawn of time. Who knows? Bye.